This is A View from the Bunker. Now, here's Derek Gilbert.
Israel's oldest and most bitter enemy, the red planet Mars, and end times prophecy. What do those three things have in common? Welcome to A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. Joining us this week, a gentleman who's not been on this program in far too long. We're glad to have him back to talk about his brand new project. He's a filmmaker, an explorer, and now an author. And his brand new book is thought-provoking, to say the least. You will enjoy this. The title of the book, Birthright, The Coming Post-Human Apocalypse and the Usurpation of Adam's Dominion on Planet Earth. It is our honor to welcome back to the bunker, Timothy Alberino. Tim, it's good to see you again, brother.
It's good to be back with you, Derek.
Your book is really fascinating in a number of ways, and we found out that you were getting close to publication as we met face-to-face, like the only time we got together with fellow believers this year, it seems like, at the Warriors Retreat that Jamie Walden organized earlier this year. And we started talking about our forthcoming book and your forthcoming book and found out that we were covering a lot of the same territory, but from different directions. You've got a really interesting take on things, and I want to first, I guess, lay the groundwork with some terms here, some terminology, as we look at what this spiritual war is all about, the usurpation of Adam's dominion on planet Earth. First of all, what is the significance of the term sons of God as it relates to the spirit realm, but also as it relates to humans?
Well, sons of God is a very important term in the Bible. Most of us, your audience, surely knows that sons of God refers to the angels. The Septuagint renders sons of God as the angels. And so in the Old Testament context, we're talking about a group of beings, a class of beings that are very ancient, exceedingly ancient, that pre-exist us. And these beings are referred to as the sons of God. Interestingly, though, in the New Testament, the term sons of God isn't just applied to these heavenly beings. It's also applied to those who believe in Christ, who are going to become sons of God, being, Jesus says, sons of the resurrection. So we're going to become like the angels, sons of God, through the power of the resurrection. And that really ties back into the core of the gospel, because we know that if you look at the genealogy of Jesus Christ, going all the way back through the antediluvian world to the patriarchs, all the way back to Adam, you have all of these sons who were the sons of earthly fathers, all the way back to Adam, who we're told is the son of God. So Adam was a son of God, created to be a son of God, and what you begin to realize, and what really struck me some years ago, was that the Bible is written in familial terms. It's talking about a family that mankind, Adam and Eve, were once a part of. And so that's how you get this union of sons of God from the Old Testament and the New Testament, because in the New Testament, we are given the power to become sons of God in Christ Jesus via the resurrection.
So the application of that term is different in the Old Testament and the New Testament. It's not just because it's Hebrew in the Old Testament and Greek in the New, but the angelic realm considered the sons of God, the B'nai Ha-Elohim in the Old Testament, and our destiny as believers in Jesus Christ is to become like them in the resurrection. Got that straight?
That's exactly right, and this is portrayed, I think, beautifully, and I highlight this in my book, in the parable of the prodigal son.
Yes.
In the parable of the prodigal son, on the surface, I believe that the parable of the prodigal son relates to Judah and Israel. But as you know, Derek, prophecy is multi-layered. It's multi-dimensional. It's often referring to two, sometimes three different things simultaneously. And that's the nature of prophecy. It's esoteric by design. It needs to be unpacked. And so the parable of the prodigal son, which is really an incredible story that Jesus tells, if you begin to understand what he's talking about, and it becomes clear what he's talking about later on the eve of his crucifixion, he kind of clarifies what he's talking about. But the parable of the prodigal son is the main protagonist of the story is a younger brother in this household, right? So there's this household, and there's this father who has this estate, and there's a younger brother, and he shares the estate with his older brother. He has a heritage. He has an inheritance. He has a birthright with his older brother in this household. And the prodigal son decides he wants his birthright. He wants his inheritance now. And of course, we all know the story. He goes out and he squanders it. That's why he's a prodigal. And he ends up becoming indentured to a swineherd, which is an archetype of Satan. And he's eating the slop of pigs, which is sin and carnality and the wages of sin, which is death. So he becomes divorced from this family. And the prodigal son, of course, realizes at some point in his squalor, he realizes that even the servants in his father's house have food, have bread to eat, and have a roof over their heads. And so he decides that he's going to go back to his father's house and just beg his father to be received even as just a lowly servant, not as a son anymore, just as a servant. You know, I've squandered my inheritance. I'm no longer worthy to be considered your son. At least receive me back as a servant. And so he makes his way back to his father's house in a state of total depravity, total squalor. And he's probably under the impression that as he approaches his father's house, his father's going to be wroth with him. He's going to be full of wrath and anger and displeased with this son of his who squandered his inheritance. And he's surprised to find that instead of being angry with him, his father runs out to meet him, embraces him, and is kissing his neck, and then clothes him with a robe and puts sandals on his feet, which is indicative of the resurrection in Christ, the righteousness of Christ. We're clothed in the righteousness of Christ. And then the son is brought back into the family. A ring is put on his finger, which I believe is the seal of the father's house. And he's reunited with the family. And of course, you have the older brother who's a little bit upset about this scenario, because he tells his father, you didn't throw a party for me, right? Because they kill the fatted calf and they throw a party for the son because of this son of mine, says the father, who was lost and now is found. So here we have the gospel, that Christ is conveying the gospel to us through this story. And so this older brother who never left the father's house is a little bit jealous about all of this celebration going on for his brother, who went and squandered his co-inheritance. By the way, they both had the inheritance in the father's house. The younger brother squandered his. So the question then becomes, who is the prodigal son? Well, the answer is us. We're the prodigal son, but even more pointedly, it's Adam. I believe that the parable of the prodigal son is about Adam in us. It's about us. We are Adam, so to speak. And so, you get to the eve of the crucifixion, and what does Jesus tell his disciples? In my Father's house are many rooms, and I am going there to prepare a place for you. And if I go there to prepare a place for you, I'll come back and get you so that you can be where I am. He is evoking the parable of the prodigal son, because he already told his disciples about the prodigal son previous to the Last Supper, and he's evoking that parable again. And he's going to go back to the Father's house to prepare a place so he can come back and get who? The prodigal. The prodigal's us, the prodigal sons, and lead us back to the Father's house. That is the gospel of Christ. We're brought back into the Father's house. We're restored to everything that Adam lost. Christ restores all of it for us, because he's our kinsman redeemer. He becomes us to redeem us so that we can be reconciled to the Father's house, to the family of God, and restored to everything that was lost in Eden at the fall.
You describe Adam as the regent of a renewed terrestrial realm. Renewed because why? What happened that the earth needed to be renewed? And what was the reaction of the older brother when they saw that this new creation that was made lower than them had been designated as the one who had dominion over this realm?
This is where I begin the story in my book. I kind of laid this book out as a story. It's a narrative. I believe it's the biblical narrative, and the biblical narrative does not begin with us. We're not the beginning of the story. Christ is the beginning of the story. That's where the story begins. I call him the singularity in my book. He is the Big Bang, so to speak. Everything begins with him. But obviously, there's this older brother. There are these other beings who we call angels, who pre-exist us, and so I think they have a history of their own. They did not come into creation with us. We know that that's the case because the Bible clearly says that they shouted for joy. The sons of God shouted for joy when the earth was created, it says in Job. And so they were there before we were created, before the earth itself was created. So they have a whole history of their own. I refer to this to this as a civilization, an exceedingly ancient civilization that pre-exists our own civilization, predates our own civilization. In fact, our civilization is derived from theirs. And so they pre-exist us, and so they must have a history of their own. And I believe that the Bible gives us clues as to some of the events that transpired before Adam was created on earth. And I believe that, and I traced this through the narrative of my book, that there was in fact there was a cosmic war that unfolded before Adam was created on Earth, and that it reaped unimaginable destruction in the solar system. You know, people refer to this as the Pre-Adamic age. And you know, in my mind, there's a so-called Pre-Adamic controversy. But how can there be a Pre-Adamic controversy if you read the text of Scripture? Obviously, somebody predated us. Mm-hmm. And if that's true, and it obviously is, then that then infers a Pre-Adamic age. And I think the Bible is very clear on that we were not the first by any means. To show up. We're not the first actors on the stage, so to speak. And so there's this whole history behind us. It's an unsung history. But again, I believe that the Bible, there's breadcrumbs of clues that are throughout the Bible of some very important things that transpired. And again, I believe that there was a great war that happened, and this was a rebellion, an insurrection against the kingdom of heaven. And some very interesting things happened, and very destructive things occurred as a result of this war, of this conflict. And it's in the aftermath of all of this massive insurrection and cosmic war. It's in the aftermath of that situation that Adam is created on Earth and given the title deed of planet Earth. So the Earth was renewed. Not created with Adam, but it was there before Adam was created, and then renewed, and then Adam was given the title deed, so to speak, of the earth, and mandated to have dominion on the earth. And as you said, you know, if we're the younger brother, if we're the new kids on the block, so to speak, in the cosmos, then that would. It's an amazing thing. It really is an amazing thing that God would create the human race, create Adam, and then give him dominion of planet Earth. That's really an incredible thing, and I talk about that in the book in great detail.
And as one of the things that we've learned from scientists over in recent years, especially, is that Earth seems especially finely tuned to support life, and especially human life. This is one of the aspects of your book that really excited Sharon and me as we were talking with you about this earlier this year, finding that we're in agreement on the existence of a pre-Adamic rebel. Sharon, I coined a term for it that I think is brilliant, calling the original rebel Prisoner Zero, who shows up in the very first verses of the book of Genesis. You delve into more specifics about the the whereabouts of this pre-existing civilization. And here, before we run out of time for this episode, and I know we're only going to scratch the surface of this here, but I'm hoping to attract enough interest on the part of viewers to really get them interested in your book, because it's very well written. I think it's totally unfair that you look really great in safari shirts walking through the jungles of Peru, and then you can come home and sit down and write elegant prose like this. It's just, you should be able to do one or the other, but doing both is just not really fair. Anyway, the pre-Adamic civilization, where was it? I mean, you place it amongst the entire solar system. What were the effects of the aftermath? And then let's get into the connection between ancient Edom, ancient Israel, and what they represent in this cosmic war.
Well, I believe that the entire solar system was inhabited in the distant past, and I don't have any problem. In fact, one of the first things that I do in the book is we define some terms, and two of the first terms that I tackle are the terms extraterrestrial and alien. And I make the case in my book that the Bible fully encompasses both of those terms. And it necessitates, it infers both of those terms. The existence of angels is without question, these beings are extraterrestrial, which means that they're not of the earth. They weren't created here, and Adam, we're specifically told, was made of the substance of the earth. But we're not told that about the angels. They're evidently not made of the substance of the earth. They're from somewhere else. And so that then makes them, by definition, extraterrestrial. And so I believe that the planets in our solar system and potentially elsewhere were inhabited, were created, in fact, to support life. And they did, until this massive conflict that broke out in the universe and wrought, as I said, unimaginable ruin. And I think we see the evidence of that conflict and of that ruin all over the solar system, especially on Mars and some of these other planets. And interestingly enough, and I put this in my book, there's reports coming out now, especially regarding the planet Venus, where astrophysicists are now saying that it appears that Venus and some of these other planets, which we've long considered to be uninhabitable, may have been inhabitable at some time in the past, and that has to do with the composition of the atmosphere and all kinds of different things. So, but we need to keep in mind that it's also possible that the planets in our solar system were not positioned the way they are today in the deep past. It's possible that all the planets in the solar system were sitting in the so-called Goldilocks zone, and when one of those planets, which I believe the Bible designates as Rahab, exploded, it might have pushed these planets apart and situated them where they are today. Or alternatively, it's also possible that each one of these planets had an atmosphere that a unique atmosphere that allowed for life to flourish, a different composition, a different kind of atmosphere than ours in the Earth, that either absorbed more light or refracted more of the sun's light and heat than the Earth. And so there's all kinds of scenarios in which we could imagine the solar system teeming with life. And I believe it was. I mean, look at the Earth. The Earth is teeming with life. The same creator that created the Earth and that created this panoply of life on planet Earth also created the heavens and the stars and the planets. So I think just by looking at what we have here on planet Earth in terms of life, the diversity of life, I think we can extrapolate that out into the universe and infer that this creator who created all of this life, that this wasn't his first go at creating living creatures.
The connection between ancient Edom, which, of course, in the Hebrew is derived from the word that means red. The connection between Edom, the shattered vessels of Edom, and end times prophecy. Can you piece all that together for us? That
gets really complicated. Edom Edom, as you know, is probably they're the arch enemy of Israel in the scriptures. Right. There are more pronouncements of judgment against Edom than any other nation, more than the Philistines, more than every other hostile nation. Edom there's a special contempt. There's a particular contempt reserved for Edom in the scriptures, and it's very, very interesting. And Edom means red. And it's derived from the name Esau, which also means red. And so you have this conflict between Jacob and Esau, Israel and Edom, which I believe is a reflection and what I call the insurgency, the dragon and his rebel insurgency. The dragon is represented by Edom. Remember in the book of Revelation that John has the vision of the red dragon, the red dragon. I believe is symbolic of Edom, and I believe, by the way, as you probably encountered already in the book, I believe there's more than one dragon. I believe there's 7 dragons, and there's a confederation, an ancient confederation, a pre-Adamic confederation of rebel princes, led by this particular individual who is the chief, the head of the confederation, who we've come to call the devil, the Satan. And so Edom represents the dragon's confederacy, the insurgency, and Israel is a representation of the kingdom of God on earth. And so you have this contention between Israel and Edom, between Jacob and Esau, that is a projection of this larger conflict, this cosmic conflict that's been raging for who knows how long. I mean, my God, who knows how long? Millennia. I don't know. A conflict that is very clearly depicted in the scriptures. I mean, it's undeniable. You know, Jesus himself said that the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent take it by force. And by the way, there's two kinds of the Bible uses two kinds of language over and over and over. Two primary. I'm looking for a better term than kinds of language, but there's familial terms of family that are constant throughout the Bible from beginning to end. You know, the sons of God, and all the way through the Bible, the brethren, the household of the elect, and so forth. So you have this familial language that's laced throughout the Bible from beginning to end. But then you also have what you might think of as you have imperial language, the language of a kingdom, that's also laced from beginning to end. And so, and it's very important to recognize that, because both of those things are very closely they're tied together, the family and the kingdom, because I don't believe that everybody in the kingdom is part of the family. And that those who are part of the family, it's a very special situation, and which I unpack in the book. It's kind of a complicated thing, but.
Well, again, I know we're only going to scratch the surface here, and with just a few minutes left on this video portion of the interview, we will continue this on my personal podcast, by the way, which you'll find linked from gilberthouse.org this coming weekend. This Dragon Slayer prophecy you refer to in the early portion of your book, Birthright, connects to all of this long war against this red dragon that you connect to ancient Edom, the land of the red. And for anyone who's ever been to Wadi Rum in Jordan, which was part of ancient Edom, you'll understand why the land was called red. It's like the remote parts of Utah that, in fact, where that stainless steel obelisk recently appeared. The Dragon Slayer prophecy, how does that connect into all of this? And again, what is the ultimate conclusion of this long war against this extra-dimensional, extraterrestrial enemy?
Well, some people refer to that as the seed prophecy, but I call it the Dragon Slayer prophecy. It's, of course, referring to the prophecy that God pronounces to the serpent after the transgression in Eden, in which he tells the serpent that basically the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman would be in conflict, his seed would bite the heel, and that her seed would crush his head, and that's of course that really sets the pace and is one of the most important themes throughout the scriptures, that you're finding this continual conflict, this, like we were talking about, depicted in Israel and Edom. And I call it the dragon slayer prophecy because the prophecy revolves around this child that would be born of Eve, that would be born a human being, that would emerge from the womb of a human woman, and that this child would be destined to crush the head of the serpent, to slay the dragon, in other words. And again, this prophecy wasn't uttered by a human prophet. This is a prophecy that's coming right from the lips of the Maker. And so the dragon is taking this prophecy really serious. He's got a big problem because he knows that at some point in time, a dragon slayer is going to emerge from the womb of a human woman, a daughter of Eve. And so he goes about for many thousands of years trying to foil this prophecy. It seems to be his chief occupation. He's got to somehow stop this prophecy from coming to fruition, because if he doesn't, the dragon slayer is going to be born. And once the dragon slayer is born, he's in big trouble. And so you can see in the Old Testament the dragon, Satan, trying to frustrate this prophecy at every turn. I mean, this is what he's doing from Genesis, all the way up through Daniel, all the way up to the New Testament. And of course, he's failing at every turn. And I think this is, all the way from Cain, by the way, he begins to put this in motion, this attempt to stop this prophecy. By the way, this prophecy is contingent on the concept of a birthright. So and it's very complicated, but this prophecy is contingent on the birthright. Whose birthright? Our birthright, the birthright of Adam. And that's why, of course, Jesus comes and is born as a human being, and he comes through the virgin womb of a daughter of Eve, and the dragon, of course, tries to destroy him. First, he tries to tempt him and cause Jesus to defect from the kingdom, and when that fails, of course, he puts into motion this plot to kill him, which he didn't. I don't think he realized that by putting Jesus to death, he was actually hastening the fulfillment of this prophecy. And so, of course, Jesus rises from the grave, and just like the woman of the vision of the woman and the dragon, Jesus is caught up to heaven. He's resurrected, and now he's sitting at the right hand of the Father. So here, the devil has a real big problem now, because he's failed to foil this prophecy, what I call the dragon slayer prophecy. He failed to stop the coming of the Son of Man, this promised seed that will come through the womb of a daughter of Eve. And he can't even get at that seed anymore, because that Son of Man is now seated at the right hand of the Father, and he's waiting. He's waiting for the moment when his Father tells him, now is the time. And what does that mean? That means that the Son of Man seated at the right hand of the Father, when the Father gives him the directive, is coming back to the earth to crush the head of the dragon and to begin to reign on the earth and put an end to the at the very end, at the end of the age, put an end to the empire of the beast, crush the head of the dragon, and at Armageddon. And so that's why I call it the dragon slayer prophecy. Of course, the dragon isn't slain at the end. He's put in a pit, and he emerges again for a little bit one more time, but that's another story.
Tim, you raised the issue of the concept, rather, of hyperdimensionality in the context of your book. We humans, you write, may have the fourth dimension concealed within our biology. What do you mean, and how does this relate to the supernatural war we're in?
Well, for many years, I've been vexed by the concept of demonic possession. I've encountered it myself in Peru, and not that I was demon possessed, but I've had to quite literally handle people who were. In fact, I'll tell you very quickly, very quickly here. There was one incident in which I had a Brazilian street fighter staying in a place that I was renting in Peru, and he was rapidly demon possessed, and he had superhuman strength, and he was just unmanageable one night. And there was no question about it. The guy was demonized, and I didn't know what to do with the guy. He just punched out one of the other young guys that was staying in the compound that I was in, my compound in Peru, and I had to deal with this guy because he was creating a big problem for us at nighttime. And long story. I grabbed him and I threw him into his room, and it was not easy. I mean, the guy's, first of all, he's a Brazilian street fighter, and on top of that, he was demonized. I grabbed him and threw him into his bedroom, into his room that he was staying in, and he was, I didn't know what to do with him. And suddenly I had this thought that came into my mind to ask the Lord to put him to sleep. And I did. I asked the Lord, I asked the Lord to put him to sleep. I said, Lord, please put this guy to sleep. And I'm telling you, Derek, he fell down on his bed and went to sleep immediately.
Wow.
And so, so anyways, it's always been very perplexing to me, this concept of demon possession, because I've always thought, where do these demons reside? Where in human biology do demons reside? And apparently you can have a whole lot of them. And, those of us who understand the origin of demons, that demons actually have a very specific origin, and that is going back to the offspring of the Watchers, and I believe the daughters of Cain, and it was the deceased giants, the Nephilim. Their deceased souls were spirits, were according to the Book of Enoch, were sentenced to wander the earth as vagabonds, bodiless vagabonds. And this was a terrible fate for them, because they'd be hungry and thirsty, and that they would have all of the afflictions, all of the desires, carnal desires, the desires of the flesh, but without bodies with which to fulfill them.
Right.
And so there's a very specific origin to these things. They're not just, ghosts or something like that. And so they they can somehow inhabit our biology, and not just our biology, apparently swine. And so that got me thinking, how in the world is that possible? And I realized that we have souls that are inhabiting our biology somehow, and that our souls, you might call it our consciousness, is there must be a seat for the soul. There must be a seat for our consciousness within our biology. And long story short, this got me thinking about hyperdimensional hyperspaces. Which is a space that is a dimension beyond the three dimensions, physical dimensions, and the fourth of time that we're familiar with. Mm-hmm. And so there'd be another facet of created order, another facet of the material world that we can't perceive, and yet we're inhabiting that facet of the material world. So it's not a dimensional. It's not some kind of a dimension that we can't access. It's actually a dimension that we're already inhabiting. We just can't perceive it. Our problem is one of perception. And so I believe that human beings, indeed all living creatures, all conscious creatures, all sentient creatures are inherently hyperdimensional. And there is a seat for the soul in the human being, a seat for the consciousness that can be inhabited by other consciousnesses, by other souls. That it's spacious enough. It's another dimensional aspect of our biology that we cannot perceive, which, by the way, I think we can perceive it. We will perceive it after the resurrection. But because of the fall, our eyes are darkened, as Paul says. We have perceptual cataracts, and we cannot perceive the totality of created order, the dimensional totality of created order.
I like that, perceptual cataracts. That's very, very appropriate. This war, as you point out, the reaction of the fallen realm, the Watchers, to the designation of Adam as the caretaker of this domain. What would they hope to gain by eliminating us?
This is a very interesting topic that I spend a lot of time in the book unpacking, because I had a question. Again, a lot of what I write in this book began with questions percolating in my brain that I didn't feel like there were adequate answers to. One of the questions was, why did the Watchers do what they did?
Yeah.
Why in the world did they do that? I mean, these are beings who are in heaven, right? These are beings who are in the presence of God, who have everything that they could ever want, who are in this immortal state. And they leave all of that behind. They abandon all of that. They forfeit it to come here. And so it got me thinking, what were the motivations of the Watchers? And I list three primary motivations. I boil it down to three. And the first one, I think we all know, because it's apparent in the text in Genesis 6 and also in the Book of Enoch and other extra biblical texts. The very, which I call the first cause of the fall of the Watchers, is lust, and there's no getting around it. And I mean, I get pretty graphic about it in the book. There's no getting around it. The first cause of the fall of the Watchers was lust. They looked on the daughters of Adam. They saw that they were comely, and they desired them. So you have lust, and they wanted to copulate and to take wives, and that's the second. So the first one is lust. The second one would be the desire to have wives and to produce offspring, to create their own families, because Adam was given he was afforded a unique privilege that the other sons of God apparently don't have, or maybe had at one time. I don't know, who knows, but he was given this privilege to have a family, to create a family unit. And that family unit was a reflection of the Father's family. And Adam was given this great, wondrous privilege. And he could have a wife, and between the man and the wife, they become one, and they can procreate new human beings who bore the image of God. And I talk a lot about the image of God. And this was a wonder among the other sons of God. So looking down at Adam, who's been bequeathed with the dominion of the earth, given the title deed of planet Earth, told to have dominion, and now he's allowed not only to have dominion of the earth, he's given a female counterpart and the privilege to procreate families. And the angels, the sons of God, are looking down at this. And then there's this third aspect, which is the aspect of dominion. Adam was given dominion of planet Earth. And this is one I think a lot of people miss. Adam was given dominion of the earth. And I believe that the Watchers envied Adam's wives and his ability to procreate families, but they also envied the dominion, his mandate of dominion that he had over the earth. And so you tie all those three things together: the lust, the wives and offspring, and then dominion of the earth. The Watchers were just boiling with envy. Envy of us, of mankind. Imagine that. I mean, I think that's fascinating. These beings, as I keep saying, these exceedingly ancient beings, intelligent beyond comprehension. They're envious of us, of Adam and his offspring, and so envious, in fact, so jealous, so desirous of what we have, that they forfeit what they had, knowing it was going to be a massive transgression. I mean, they made an oath with each other, according to the Book of Enoch. They bound themselves by mutual implications because they realized what we're about to do, we're going to get in big trouble. But they were so desirous, so envious of us that they did it, that it was worth it to them to take this immense risk. And And then, of course, we all know the story. They came down to Hermon and then descended into the plains and began to accomplish their desires. And so I believe that they did exactly what they wanted to do. They took wives, they copulated with them, and they procreated offspring. But they did something else that I think most people miss. Not only did they procreate offspring, I think they ensured that their offspring would usurp the dominion of Adam on earth. That their offspring, and this is, I keep saying this because it's true, but this is a very complicated scenario, but that their offspring, because they were hybrids, part, watcher, part human female, part human, because their watchers were hybrids, half-breeds, they were human enough to inherit the birthright of Adam, dominion of the earth. Because, by the way, the book's called Birthright. The birthright of Adam is dominion of the earth. Mm-hmm. Our birthright is dominion of the earth. And so their offspring were human enough to inherit this dominion of the earth, and they happened to also be giants, so they weren't going to have any problem unseating, dethroning the offspring of Adam and taking over. And so the Watchers, they got everything they wanted. They had their wives, they had their offspring, and they became, for all intents and purposes, the gods of the earth. And their hybrid offspring, human enough to usurp and to appropriate human dominion on earth, were governing the earth as the kings of the earth. And it was a dystopia, the likes of which the earth, the likes of which we've never seen before, but we will see again to some degree before the coming of the Son of Man. Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, I think that you're tracking exactly with what Sharon and I took the book Veneration, which was all about this war and the attempt by the fallen to replace humanity as the dominant species on Earth with their children, which are the half divine, half human hybrid. I mean, the amazing thing is that God responded by sending a fully divine, fully human Savior to redeem His children. It's an incredible story.
It is an incredible story. It really is. I think it's, honestly, I think I can say this with full confidence that every single story, every epic that we have as human beings, going all the way back to the pre-flood world, to the patriarchs, is fundamentally derived from the story of Christ, from the gospel of Christ. It is the original epic. It is the original heroic tale. And if you think about it, it's got every element. It's got the seeds of every element of every story moving forward. The story of Adam and the fall, and this hero of humanity, Christ, and the great enemy, the dragon, and this whole thing. It's every human story has been derived from the gospel. The gospel is the seed of every single story that we tell as human beings.
Yeah, it's as an author, you don't need any broader palette than what you get in the Bible itself. I mean, Sharon is weaving some epic fiction of her own, starting in the Victorian era with supernatural warfare or spiritual warfare as the basis for the story. I've started dabbling in it, and we'll probably do more in the years to come. But when you start realizing how, well, that's what inspired the title of our recent book, Giants, Gods, and Dragons. I mean, they're all in there. What more do you need as a fiction author to tell an epic story? But when you're telling the Bible and sharing it with kids, and as the father of 5 sons now, you know the importance of or the utility of a compelling story to make a point. If we were communicating this well with our children and our grandchildren, I think we wouldn't see the statistics that we're seeing, the survey results that come out of George Barna's work there at Arizona Christian University, that millennials now, only 2% of American millennials have a biblical worldview. So
I couldn't agree more. The story of the gospel we somehow lost the story. I mean, we have retained some of the doctrine and some of the theological precepts, but we've lost the narrative. And that's kind of what I try and do in this book, is recover the narrative, because there is no greater story that has ever been told than the gospel. And it's not just some, and I say in the note from the author at the beginning of my book, this is something that C.S. Lewis realized. This is what caused C.S. Lewis to come to faith in Christ, because Tolkien was one of the Inklings, a group who actually convinced C.S. Lewis not to look at the Bible as a book of precepts and Jewish laws, but instead to look at it as a grand narrative, an epic story, a myth that just so happens to be true. Mm-hmm. And it was when C.S. Lewis began to view the gospel of Christ in that light that he converted. That's how C.S. Lewis came to Christ. As soon as he realized that this was an epic tale, a true story, and he began to understand the narrative of the Bible, and this was a very intellectual man. Oh, yeah. I mean, C.S. Lewis was an atheist, very intellectual atheist, and as soon as he understood the story, his heart melted. I mean, he was wrecked by the gospel, and I think we need to recover that, and I think we need to start telling the story of the gospel again, because there is no greater story.
Well, even the great stories of the pagans, and you point this out in your book, and again, this is something that Sharon and I have been tracking for some time now. It's why I titled my previous book "Last Clash of the Titans," because looking at the what we've been taught as mythology. All of us have had to take mythology courses in high school, and we're studying essentially pagan religion as literature. But the poet Hesiod and Homer understood the origin of the demigods, the daemons, who they believed were actually kindly and helpful. And when you understand what Hesiod and Homer were writing about, you realize that they were just telling a forgive the term, but a bastardized version of what had happened in Genesis chapter 6.
Precisely. And, it makes sense that everybody's telling the same story, because we know that there was one family in a post-flood context who was keeping all of these stories and transmitting them. That was Noah and his sons. And then, of course, you have the Babel incident and everybody dividing and different languages. And so you have the seeds of the same story going all over the earth. And everybody's telling the story now from a pagan perspective, and of course everybody was pagan at the time. There was no Israel yet. There were no Jews, but they were That's exactly the right term. Is the story was getting bastardized, and intentionally so, by the enemies of God, and twisted and adulterated to the point where the bad guys were now the good guys. In fact, if you look at all of these the myths. Regarding the flood or the great cataclysm and the gods who descended and so forth, almost in every single case across the board. I mean, from the all the way from the Sumerians to the Peruvians to the Inca, all over the earth, the Aztec, everywhere, all over the earth, the bad guys are suddenly the good guys. And the good guys are the bad guys. And there's only one, there may be a couple more, but there's really only one narrative that stands out, that contradicts that, and it is it's the Hebrew narrative. The Hebrew narrative stands out like a sore thumb, because the Hebrew narrative is saying, no, the Golden Age really was not a very good time. The Golden Age was a very bad time. Mm-hmm. Everybody else is saying the Golden Age was this wonderful thing that happened on planet Earth, and everybody wants to return to the Golden Age. But the Hebrews are saying that the Golden Age was a time of rebellion, was a time of bloodshed and violence and debauchery that resulted in judgment. And they almost stand alone in that narrative. I mean, a lot of cultures say that this Golden Age, that the people became evil and eventually, they had to be destroyed but in almost every case, the civilizers, the gods, are seen are painted in a very good light, and they're benevolent, they're Promethean, and except for the biblical narrative, these are rebels. These are defectors from the kingdom of heaven, the Watchers, who came down and transgressed. And again, the biblical narrative almost stands all by itself. In contradicting this narrative of the Golden Age.
Oh, absolutely. And just even the cosmology of the Hebrews, in that their God, Yahweh, was the only one among ancient Mesopotamian religions who pre-existed everything and spoke all things into existence. All of the other gods from ancient Mesopotamia to Greece to Rome, the Egyptians, etc., evolved from some primordial chthonic type gods, earth and sky, who then created or were the progenitors of the first generation of gods, who then created the second generation of gods, and so on. There was only one. And isn't it ironic that the skeptics and the atheists will point to the Bible and say, because it's tracking the same stories that we get from ancient Akkad and Sumer and Babylon, they must have copied their religion from the...
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, except for all of this stuff here that we just discussed, and the fact that it is remarkable. And when you view the Bible in this light and realize what an amazing story it is, and you just like a director with the skill of a Peter Jackson to actually put this to film, because if kids understood what was in it and what this story is leading to, and then realize that, hey, and guess what? We're here like on about page 450 out of this 500-page book. We're in the middle of this story. I think they would get a lot more excited about their faith. The book is Birthright by Timothy Alberino, the subtitle, The Coming Post-Human Apocalypse and the Usurpation of Adam's Dominion on Planet Earth. We could keep going for a few more hours here, Tim, I know, because we've only, again, scratched the surface, but hopefully enough to get people excited about reading the book. Again, as a reminder, where do people find their copy of Birthright?
The book is up on Amazon, available now on Amazon. If you want, you go to my website and follow the link over to I just published it on Amazon a few days ago, and so even if you type my name in the title of the book, you have to scroll down to find it. But if you go to my website, there's a direct link right on the website to the page on Amazon, so get on Amazon.
Tim's website is timothyalberino.com. There'll be a link to his website and also a direct link to the book at Amazon in the show notes at vftb.net or wherever else you're finding this podcast, which as always is wherever fine podcasts are sold. Tim, enjoying reading the book. I still need to make my way through the rest of it, but it's like a fine cigar or a good sip of whiskey. You want it to last for a while. You don't want to chug it all at once. But there's a lot of meat here, and obviously.
Let me just say also that what we were just talking about, the usurpation of what the Watchers did. I'm leading up to the end of the book where I'm talking about a scenario very much like that's going to happen again, and it's going to lead to a post-human apocalypse. And I work my way through the aliens, and I work my way through all the way up through the post-human paradigm and transhumanism. So I go from the Watchers and from pre-Adamic stuff to the Watchers all the way. So it's basically pre-Eden to Armageddon.
And, again, to help you understand the Bible as a story that includes everything from a pre-Adamic civilization to war in outer space to dragons to giants to wizards to end times prophecy, apocalyptic and post-humans, aliens, what more do you need? But again, when you understand that it's all grounded in the narrative of the Bible, which is the true and inerrant Word of God, it makes you excited to get up every day, because every day is another mission for the King.
Right.
Timothy Alberino, thanks for joining us today. We sure appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you again face to face one of these days.
Absolutely. Hopefully in Sardinia again.
Again, check the show notes at vftb.net or wherever you're listening or viewing this podcast, although it's just a still image. You'll find the link to Timothy's website and to the new book, Birthright, in the notes. Please check that out. You will enjoy the read. Coming up, how you can get my new novels absolutely free, and some thoughts on the ongoing 2020 election straight ahead as A View from the Bunker continues. Question: how do you fight something you cannot see? Davian is a third-level master of the Order, a small group of men who alone have the power to battle the most fearsome creatures in all of Saruman. For thousands of years, the Brothers of the Order have protected their world. Now, something has upset the delicate balance of power between man and dragon, and Davian must face what appears to be a dragon that cannot be seen. But Davian is losing his grip on reality, and the fate of the world rests with a stable hand, an underfed priest, and a gardener who's fallen from the stars. Iron Dragons, Book 1 of the Saruman Quest by Derek P. Gilbert. New from Rose Avenue Fiction. Driving the internet to think every Sunday night from the beautiful Missouri Ozarks. This is A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. You'll find us online, vftb.net. Also on Spreaker, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, now Amazon Music, also iHeartRadio, Spotify, and wherever fine podcasts are sold. The easiest way, of course, is just download our free mobile app. That free app for Android and iOS devices brings all of these programs directly to your smartphone or tablet. And you'll find us on social media at View from Bunker, that's Twitter, of course, or at Derek Gilbert, where I post most of the political stuff that I think is interesting. On Facebook at View from the Bunker, and also now on Parler and MeWe. Parler and MeWe, handle at Derek P. Gilbert. This election is dragging out like the election in 2000, George W. Bush and Al Gore, but things are, if anything, more obviously corrupt than they were in 2000. I think most of us in America have kind of always known that in some of the big cities, those that are controlled, especially by Democratic machines, Chicago, Baltimore, we saw it to an extent in St. Louis during the Bush years when polling places were allowed to stay open past the designated closing time because of some bogus reason. I remember our senator at the time, Kit Bond, just blowing a gasket. But this year, it has become so overt that one thing Donald Trump has done, whether you like him or you hate him, he has changed American politics forever because, first of all, he's made it very clear that the American media is so in the tank, not just for Democrats. I mean, this is not a Republican-Democrat thing. This is really a deep state uniparty thing. The reason I don't think Republicans really made an issue about this wide-scale voting irregularities that have taken place in recent years is because the Republican candidates have always been from the approved list. I mean, look at who we've had running as Republicans recently. Mitt Romney, John McCain. How would their presidency have been any different, really, from what we had under 8 years of Barack Obama? They really would not have been substantially different in any way, shape, or form. And I would argue that George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, same deal. Not really any different. The Democratic candidates, the Republican candidates that are put up, or have been until Donald Trump came along, were from the approved list. They were acceptable to the deep state. That they could be counted on despite the public disagreements over hot-button social issues like abortion and gay marriage. They would be called, could be counted upon to do the right thing for the deep state, which is to continue the never-ending wars and keep funneling money to the friends of those in government, serving their constituency, who are those who pay the lobbyists in Washington, D.C., not you and me. The reason Donald Trump has had such an enthusiastic support and such a strong turnout in the 2020 election is because the American public, or at least the conservatives, true conservatives, understand that Donald Trump is actually fighting for us and fighting for the country. No, he's not a perfect man. He's not lived a perfect life. You would not hold up Donald Trump as an example for Christians to follow. But he has made it clear to us, if we didn't realize it before, that this game has been rigged. And I don't think America goes back to being the way it was prior to 2020, even if he is somehow manages to get a second term. The irony here, and there are some interesting developments that are taking place as we're recording this on the weekend of December 5th, 2020, just to timestamp this if you're catching this in the archives at some point in the future. This week, we've seen a number of states, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, Arizona, holding hearings, typically Republican state legislators. Democrats don't really want to hear this. Republican state legislators hearing evidence from eyewitnesses, people who have signed sworn affidavits, led by Trump's legal team, mainly Rudy Giuliani, presenting their knowledge of what took place on election night. And some of these things are really eye-opening. A contractor for Dominion Election Systems at Detroit, the Detroit Counting Center in Michigan, says that thousands of ballots were scanned multiple times. The Amistad Project, which is kind of leading the charge as well from an independent standpoint, is arguing that in a new report that these election college deadlines are not set in stone, and that because state and local officials during the election conducted their business illegally, we don't need to certify the results by December 14th or resolve the disputes this coming week by December 8th. So again, we will see what happens there. There's an audit of mail-in ballots in Nevada, says that about 3% of the ballots cast there were cast on behalf of voters who either never received a ballot in the mail or were cast on behalf of voters who didn't vote at all or claim that they didn't vote at all. Now, a 3% change in the turnout in Nevada would not be enough to swing the election to President Trump, but it does suggest that the system is not working the way we've been told. Contrary to the fact checkers on Facebook and are the reassurances we keep hearing from mainstream media, this is not the most secure election in history. Claims of irregularities are not baseless. We've heard that word far too often over the last month. But whether it's enough to actually turn the election to Donald Trump, we don't know. And I would caution Christians not to pin their hopes for the next 4 years on a second Donald Trump term. It is possible that the deep state finally recognized their mistake in 2016, which was not taking him seriously enough. They didn't have the backup plan, the plan B in place in 2016. This time around, I think they did, which is why we saw multiple states stop counting in the middle of the night, then start recounting the next morning once they'd figured out how many additional ballots they needed. Do I have any evidence for that? No, just that's my sense of things based on what we've seen in the news over the last couple of weeks. But again, will it be enough for a court to have the guts to overturn the apparent results of this election? Don't know. But that would just ensure that America does not go back to being the way it was prior to 2020. The irony here is that, like Obi-Wan Kenobi, by destroying Trump, they may make him more powerful than they can possibly imagine. Imagine Donald Trump deciding to lead a new political party. How many Republicans would follow him to a new party? He received 95%. 95% of the Republicans who voted in the presidential election voted for Trump. Well, it's like a record. He received more votes than any president in history. Any candidate in history, except for Joe Biden, who we're supposed to believe received something like, 12 million more votes than Barack Obama, the rock star? Not likely, to say the least. So what happens going forward, we don't know. Sharon is wise. I depend on my wife for her wise counsel. It's very easy for me to get very wrapped up in this and very upset because my head is in this 4 or 5 days a week as I track this to try to comment on it semi-intelligently for Skywatch TV. But we just need to remember, on January 21st, 2021, regardless of who's in the Oval Office, God is still on his throne. He's the one who raises up kings and brings them down. And if Joe Biden is sworn in, it's only because God is allowing it for his purposes. We might not like it. The next 4 years might not be enjoyable from a Christian's perspective. In fact, from here on out, what's left of the United States may not be very friendly toward openly proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ. We're seeing hints of that already in certain legal cases being brought against ministries around the country. I'm not going to go into that right now because that's a rabbit trail, but we have enjoyed 250 years here in the United States as Christians of unprecedented freedom and liberty to proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ. Our brothers and sisters in other parts of the world, they would love to live under the system that we have right now. Doctrinally speaking, the church in America is mostly asleep. And maybe what's happening is intended to kick us in the pants. Time for kindergarten Christianity is over. Time to wake up. Now, I'm not saying that means armed rebellion, not at all, but just saying that maybe we need a little pressure applied to burn off the impurities and refine what's left of the church here in the United States. So that is where we stand as of early December here in 2020. We'll see what happens the next couple of weeks. Promise to be very, very interesting indeed. President Trump seems awfully confident, I will say this, for somebody who has apparently lost the election. Apparently being the key word there. I mentioned before the break that you could get my new novels for free. Iron Dragons, Book 1 of the Saruman Quest, and The God Conspiracy, which is eerily relevant now. Both of those books have been re-edited, updated, and republished this year. The God Conspiracy in particular, dealing as it does with a spreading pandemic, a controversial vaccine, mass incarcerations, and so on. That, again, just seemed awfully timely not to put out now while we have a little more of a platform to let people know about it. But you can get both of those for free if you are a subscriber to Amazon Prime. Both of those books are now available in paperback and for Kindle, but they're both in the Kindle Unlimited program, which means that if you're an Amazon Prime subscriber and you are subscribed to Kindle Unlimited, you can check them out for free. No risk to you if you are a heavy reader and part of the Amazon Kindle Unlimited program, as Sharon and I are. Please take advantage of that. You'll find them linked at my author page at Amazon, which is amazon.com/author/Derek P. Gilbert. And I thank you in advance. Coming up in 2021, we've got a few conferences on the schedule. First, of course, is the Hear the Watchman Conference, the Warriors Conference, coming to San Diego January 14th through 16th. We're looking forward to that. This will be at a Christian-owned hotel in San Diego, the Legacy Hotel and Spa. And we will be there along with David Heavener, with Pastor Paul Begley, Jamie Walden, Colonel David Giamona, who is the co-author with our friend Troy Anderson of the forthcoming book, The Military Guide to Armageddon. Joni Stahl will be there. Praise and worship music from Lori and Jacob Bango and Justin Gambino. So this will be a wonderful gathering, but it's limited to 200 people. So do reserve your place early. You can find out more online at hearthewatchmen.com, hearthewatchmen.com. In March, got a small conference on the schedule. This will be a first time going to Murfreesboro, Tennessee, the Decoding the Supernatural Conference. Sharon, me, Ellie Marzulli, and Jeff Jansen. Jeff and Jan Jansen run Global Fire Ministries in Murfreesboro, which is near Nashville. And Jeff is the host of a new program now called Decoding the Supernatural. So we're looking forward to getting there, talking about the subjects we've covered in our recent books, Veneration and Giants, Gods, and Dragons. You can find out more online at globalfireministries.com. That's March 4th through 7th of 2021. Decoding the Supernatural Conference. Ellie Marzulli, Sharon, me, and Jeff Jansen at Global Fire Ministries in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And then in April, we head to Israel, the Skywatch TV Tour of Israel, April 18th through May 1st, with an optional 4-day extension to Jordan. This is, as I've said, a tour like no other through the Holy Land, besides the sites that you want to see, like Jerusalem, including the Temple Mount, which will be very interesting because it's during Ramadan, but we went up the Temple Mount during Ramadan in 2019, so we're planning to do it again. We will see, thanks to our special guest, Messianic Rabbi Zev Porat, the actual historic sites of the crucifixion and the burial tomb of Jesus. These are not on the tours. The crucifixion site is a parking lot today. But Zev will share his research and explain why those are the actual sites. And then, of course, we'll see the Sea of Galilee. We will worship on the Sea of Galilee. We will baptize in the Jordan River and visit Masada, which is awe-inspiring in its own way. Spend a day just relaxing at the Dead Sea. And then archaeological sites like Gilgal Rephaim, Joshua's Altar, and the Serpent Mound of Bashan. You can find out more online, including a sample itinerary and costs, at skywatchingisrael.com. That's skywatchingisrael.com. Appreciate you taking time to listen this week. Please remember that you can leave us a review. Let other people know what you think about this program at Spreaker, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, wherever else you find us. A View from the Bunker, production of Gilbert House, released under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Our announcer is DC Good. Please check out the Gilbert House Fellowship, the weekly Bible study that Sharon and I produce. You'll find that online at gilberthouse.org. And remember, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is A View from the Bunker.